You ever get that feeling like your own family's just waiting for you to fail? Like they're watching you try something different, not because they're proud, but because they're eager to say, "I told you so"? Yeah, that was my entire 20s. My name's Bradley. I'm 31 now, and for the last 8 years, my family thought I was some kind of joke. I wasn't the golden child. That title went to my brother, Connor. Tall, charming, straight A student turned corporate darling. The guy who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. Meanwhile, I was still working on that silly app thing. They used to say it just like that. Still working on that silly app thing? My mom would ask during Sunday dinners, her voice sweet but sharp, like she was genuinely concerned I hadn't grown out of my phase. Dad would chuckle over his wine glass, trying not to smirk, and Connor? He'd just look at me with that same smug expression he wore when he beat me at Monopoly as a kid, like he owned the whole board, and I was still paying rent on Baltic Avenue. Our family wasn't rich, but Dad did well for himself. He owned a mid-sized real estate firm in town, Bradford and Lane, and it had been growing for years. The plan, apparently, was always for Connor to take over. They even gave him a shiny office the day after he graduated college. Didn't even pretend to interview anyone else. By 24, he had a $100,000 BMW, a condo downtown, and an executive title with strategy in it, whatever that meant. Me? I graduated with a computer science degree and a half-baked idea for an app one couldn't stop thinking about. It started as a project in my senior year. A scheduling tool for freelance workers, plumbers, contractors, movers, people who constantly got double-booked or lost business because they didn't have the time or tools to manage calls, quotes, and jobs. The UI was ugly. The back end was duct-taped together. But it worked. The second I told my family I was turning down 2 job offers to build it full-time, it was like I'd just announced I was becoming a mime. "What about benefits?" my mom said. "What about a real job?" my dad added. "It's cute that you want to make an app," Connor said. "But don't you think that space is a little saturated?" I brushed it off at first. I figured once they saw the prototype, once they saw users signing up, they'd get it. But that day never came. Every family gathering, every holiday, every birthday dinner, someone, usually Connor, would make a jab. "Still playing CEO?" he'd say, like I was pretending, like it was dress up. The worst part? I kept expecting it to stop. I thought maybe the first 1,000 users would impress them, or my first small business partnership, or when I moved out of the apartment I was renting with 3 roommates into a studio of my own. But it was never enough. Not when compared to Connor, who closed a deal on a 5-unit commercial building the same week I celebrated my first profitable quarter. Guess whose story dominated dinner that night? Over the years, I learned to stop bringing it up. My company, Streamline Pro, was growing slowly but surely, and I figured I didn't need their approval. But deep down, I wanted it. I wanted to walk into Thanksgiving just once without feeling like the family disappointment. I wanted my dad to ask about my work with genuine curiosity, not polite nods. I wanted my mom to brag about me the way she did about Connor, like he was some kind of local celebrity. He was on a billboard once for the family firm. She made it her Facebook cover photo for 3 years. But that Thanksgiving, the one that changed everything, that one started the same way all the others did, with fake smiles and subtle jabs. I showed up a little late. I'd been on a Zoom call with a potential investor from London, trying to wrap it up before dinner. When I walked in, Connor was already in full performance mode, telling my cousins about his latest strategic acquisition, whatever that meant. My mom waved me in, said, "Bradley, there's some room at the far end of the table," like I was the kid who showed up late to school lunch. She didn't even ask why, just assumed it wasn't important. I took my seat next to my uncle, who immediately asked if I was still doing that tech thing. I gave my usual smile and nod, trying to keep it together. It wasn't worth it to explain. Not this year. We ate. We laughed. Well, they laughed. Connor told some story about negotiating a lease, and everyone acted like it was the most thrilling tale they'd ever heard. I tried to contribute here and there, but every time I opened my mouth, someone talked over me. It was like background noise. Bradley's talking again about widgets or something. Let's get back to Connor's commercial property stories. Then came dessert. Pumpkin pie, apple crumble, and Connor's favorite moment, the casual dig. He leaned back, wiped his mouth with a napkin, and glanced at me with that same smirk I'd known since we were kids. "So," he said, loud enough for the table to quiet. "Still playing CEO?" I froze. Just for a second. It wasn't the first time he'd said it. Wouldn't be the last. But for some reason, this one hit harder. Maybe because I was exhausted. Maybe because we'd just closed the biggest deal of our lives the night before. Maybe because I knew what was about to happen, and they didn't. I didn't say anything. I just smiled, shrugged, reached for the whipped cream. 15 minutes later, the TV behind him. Dad had one of those obnoxiously large flat screens mounted over the fireplace, lit up with a breaking news headline. Local startup acquired for $50 million. The banner read in bright red. Under it, a picture of me. My LinkedIn photo, actually. I made a mental note to update it later. Connor turned, saw the screen, stared for a beat too long. I felt my heart hammering, but on the outside, I stayed calm. My uncle nearly dropped his wine glass. My mom's hand went to her mouth. Dad leaned forward like he wasn't sure if it was real. And Connor? His face went pale, like ghost pale. He looked back at me, blinking. Is that you? I didn't answer right away, because this wasn't just about the money. This was about every dinner, every birthday, every holiday where I was made to feel small, where my wins weren't wins because they didn't come with a corporate title or a leased BMW. This was about to be the moment everything changed. But before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand just how deep the disrespect ran. Because this wasn't just one Thanksgiving. This was 8 years in the making. And the worst part? They didn't even know what they had done to me. Yet, they say every straw looks harmless until it's the one that breaks your back. That Thanksgiving night, with my face glowing on the TV screen behind Connor, should have felt like victory, like justice. But as I sat there, watching my family fumble over their reactions, some stunned, some awkwardly sipping wine, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hollow. Like the years I'd spent clawing my way through silence and ridicule couldn't be undone by one headline. Not even a $50 million one. Connor stared at the screen like it had just insulted him personally. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. My dad cleared his throat and tried to pivot, mumbling something like, "Well, look at that. Guess that little app turned out all right." No congratulations. No warmth. Just surprise, and maybe a bit of discomfort, like my success had disrupted the natural order of things. My mom stayed quiet. She didn't ask questions, didn't even look at me, just busied herself clearing plates like she suddenly remembered the dishwasher existed. That part stung more than anything. And in that moment, I realized something. They weren't proud of me. They were threatened. Because for the first time, they couldn't ignore me. I didn't need their validation anymore, and that made them uncomfortable. But that wasn't the breaking point. That came weeks later. See, after the acquisition, my inbox blew up. Reporters, former classmates, recruiters, even my old college TA. I got invited to speak at a regional startup summit. LinkedIn messages piled up from investors asking if I was working on anything new. And I was. Quietly. I'd already begun building something else. A bigger project. But that wasn't for them to know. Not yet. For the first time in years, I felt light. I stopped over-explaining myself. Stopped hoping family dinners would change. I just existed without apologizing for it. But then, the calls started. At first, it was subtle. My mom asking if I could talk to Connor about a project he's working on. Because, in her words, now that you've both found your way, maybe you could help each other out. Found my way? Like I'd been lost. Like I'd stumbled into a windfall. I politely declined. Said I was busy. Because I was. But also because I knew where this was going. Then my dad called me out of the blue. "Bradley," he said, using his serious voice, the one he reserved for talking to clients or telling me I'd disappointed him. "I think it's time you consider giving back to the family. We've all supported you through the years, haven't we?" I almost laughed. Supported me? They mocked me, ignored me, barely tolerated my updates. Connor once told a room full of relatives that I was the family's resident app store. They all laughed. I laughed too back then. I thought I had to. "Dad," I said, "I appreciate the sentiment, but I'm not looking to merge businesses, if that's what this is about." He paused. "It's not about business. It's about legacy. You have something valuable now, and you could strengthen the Bradford brand if you brought it under our umbrella." Our umbrella. That's what this was really about. Control. They didn't care about me building something. They wanted to own it, rebrand it, stick the family name on it, and pretend it had always been theirs. I said no. And that's when things got worse. At Christmas, Connor showed up in a new Tesla and made sure everyone knew it was self-funded. He practically shouted it across the kitchen while pouring eggnog. I didn't say a word, but I noticed how Dad slapped him on the back and called him a real entrepreneur. When gifts were exchanged, Connor handed me a book, How to Lead When You're Not Ready. Everyone laughed. I forced a chuckle too, but it took everything I had not to stand up and leave. That night, my cousin Daniel pulled me aside. Man, they really don't let up on you, do they? I shrugged. It's whatever. I'm used to it. He gave me a look. You shouldn't be. I went home and sat in my dark apartment for an hour before realizing I hadn't even opened the one gift I actually cared about. An email confirmation from a school I'd secretly donated $100,000 to, funding a scholarship for underrepresented tech students. I never told anyone in my family. Still haven't. It felt like the one thing I could keep for myself, untouched by their cynicism. Then came January. Connor launched a new division under my dad's company, something about digital expansion. His LinkedIn banner changed to include words like innovation lead. I rolled my eyes but didn't think much of it until someone forwarded me the press release. Bradford and Lane was apparently building a revolutionary software platform for property scheduling. The wording? Nearly identical to what I'd written in my original pitch deck 3 years ago. I blinked. Read it again. And again. They'd copied my idea. Not just the concept, the language, the structure, the target audience. Even the screenshots were eerily similar to the early prototype I'd demoed to Connor years ago when I naively thought he was showing interest. I stared at the screen, mouth dry. It wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't just petty jabs or subtle digs anymore. This was theft. I called my lawyer the next morning. He asked for every document I had. Emails, messages, timestamped files. Thankfully, I'd been obsessive about saving everything. Part of me always knew I'd need a paper trail. I just never expected it to be against my own family. My lawyer was quiet after reviewing it all. Finally, he said, "You've got a strong case. But lawsuits are messy, especially when they involve blood." I didn't file anything. Not yet. I needed to be sure. I needed proof that it wasn't just Connor using a similar idea. I needed to know they'd crossed the line fully. So I waited, watched, lurked, and then it came. A month later, my friend Kyle, who used to work in my dad's accounting department before jumping to a tech startup, called me out of nowhere. "Hey man, weird question," he said. "Did you ever consult on anything for Bradford and Lane?" "No," I said slowly. "Why?" "Because I just saw a slide deck your brother was presenting at some conference. And dude, it looked exactly like your app. He even used the same slogan. Like, word for word." I asked him to send it. He did. And there it was. My tagline, lifted clean off my old marketing site. My early logo, barely modified. And in the corner, my brother's smug face, standing in front of it like it was his creation. My hands trembled as I closed the file. That was the moment it hit me. They didn't just steal my idea. They thought they could get away with it. Because I was the lesser son, the dreamer, the joke who never quite grew up. And now that I had something worth taking, they were taking it. No remorse. No apology. Just entitlement. And that was the breaking point. I didn't cry. Didn't scream. I just sat there in my chair, staring at my own stolen work, knowing exactly what I had to do. But if they thought I was going to roll over like I always had, they didn't know me at all. Not anymore. Because this time, I had leverage. This time, they were going to learn what it felt like to be underestimated. And I was going to make sure the whole city saw it. But before I tell you how I got my revenge, you should know about the last phone call I ever got from Connor. Because what he said was the final nail in the coffin. Connor's last phone call came on a gray Monday morning, barely a week after I found out he'd paraded my stolen work on stage like it was his own. I was sitting in my office, staring at the empty coffee cup in my hand, wondering if I even had the strength to fill it again, when his name lit up my phone. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Bradley," he said, chipper, like we were old friends catching up. "So listen, I've been thinking. There's actually a spot opening up on our digital strategy team. Dad and I were talking, and we thought, maybe you'd want to come on board. Bring your expertise." I didn't say a word. "And hey," he continued, "I know things were kind of tense at Christmas, but this is a real offer. We'd make you a manager, maybe even director level down the line. Lot of stability." That's when I realized he wasn't just calling to rub it in. He was trying to absorb me, to neutralize the threat. Because deep down, he knew what he'd done. And he knew I knew. I forced a laugh. "Connor, Are you offering me a job at a company that just stole my software? There was a pause, then a laugh. Come on, man. It's not stealing. It's business. And you walked away from that idea years ago, didn't you? I hung up. That was the moment I snapped. Not out loud. Not in some dramatic scene. I snapped quietly. Because there's a special kind of pain when you realize the people who were supposed to protect you, build you up, will tear you down the second you threaten their ego. I spent the next 3 days in a fog. Didn't eat. Barely slept. Just sat in my apartment with the lights off, watching the ceiling fan spin. Everything I'd built taken. Rebranded. Claimed by the same people who told me I'd never succeed. I couldn't go on social media. Couldn't check my inbox. My name was still circulating after the acquisition, but all I felt was shame. I didn't feel like a millionaire. I felt like a fraud. Like I'd let them win, even with the scoreboard in my favor. Worse still, I began to doubt myself. Maybe I was naive. Maybe I should have protected my idea better. Maybe Connor was right. Maybe he was just better at business than me. That was the lowest I'd ever felt. Until the email came. It was from Sandra, the operations manager at the local tech incubator. I'd met her once at a pitch competition 2 years ago. She'd watched from the sidelines while I stumbled through a demo with a glitchy app and a coffee stain on my shirt. I remembered her because she was the only one who gave me real feedback afterward. Her subject line, coffee? The body was simple. Hey Bradley, saw the news. You built something special. If you're still in town, I'd love to catch up. I almost didn't reply, but I did. I wasn't sure why. Maybe because I had nothing else to lose. We met 2 days later at a little cafe near the train station. She smiled as I walked in, and before I could even sit, she said, "You look tired. Like found out your brother is a snake tired." I blinked. "You heard? Bradford and Lane just pitched your app to one of our startups last week." One of my interns recognized the interface immediately. Said it looked like Streamline's twin. She narrowed her eyes. "You didn't license it to them, did you?" I shook my head. Sandra leaned back, arms crossed. "Then it's time you remind them who they're dealing with." That conversation lit something in me I thought I'd lost. She offered me a space at the incubator, free for 6 months. Said they had developers and designers rotating in and out all the time, and if I had another idea, she'd personally help me source talent. "You already built one success," she said. "Now build one they can't touch." That night, I went home and dusted off an old notebook. Inside were sketches for a new platform, one I jotted down back when Streamline was still in beta. It was bigger, smarter, rooted in the same space, but with a broader vision. I called it Relay. Where Streamline helped small businesses manage jobs, Relay would help them scale, automated quoting, invoicing, CRM, analytics, everything in one ecosystem. A full-stack growth engine. But this time, I wasn't going to build it alone. I started showing up at the incubator every morning at 8 a.m. sharp. Sandra introduced me to Lila, a front-end wizard who could prototype faster than I could describe the feature. Then there was Marcus, a back-end guy with a soft spot for optimization. We clicked instantly. I didn't have to explain why this mattered. They got it. And more importantly, they got me. The first few months were a grind. I poured my savings into the prototype. I slept on the couch at the office some nights. Ate too many instant noodles. There were moments of doubt, days where bugs wouldn't fix, or partners ghosted, or I woke up wondering if I was just running away from a fight instead of facing it. But every time I felt that pull, I remembered Connor's voice on the phone. "We thought you might want to come on board." And it lit a fire. We launched Relay in private beta 6 months later. 10 businesses signed up, then 30, then 100. This time, I didn't go chasing headlines. No press releases. No splashy demos. Just results. By the end of the first quarter, our users reported an average 27% increase in monthly revenue. Then something wild happened. One of our clients, a logistics company out of Milwaukee, wrote a glowing blog post about how Relay had saved them $80,000 in 1 quarter by automating their entire workflow. The post got picked up by a few newsletters. From there, things snowballed. Investors started sniffing around. But I wasn't in a rush. I'd seen what happened when you let money steer the ship too early. Then one day, I got a text from Sandra. "Turn on channel 9. Now." I did. And there, on the screen, was Connor, standing on a stage at some emerging business leaders summit, talking about innovation and building tools for the digital future. Behind him, a slide with my screenshots. Again. But this time, he slipped up. He mentioned specific product features that weren't public, features that only existed in my development roadmap. That's when I knew someone had gotten access to my original prototype files, probably when I demoed them to Connor years ago, and he'd been holding on to them, studying them, planning this for longer than I realized. But that slip-up? That was enough. I clipped the segment, sent it to my lawyer. He called me back 10 minutes later. "This is gold," he said, but I wasn't ready to fire yet. Because if I'd learned anything over the last year, it was this. You don't just beat people like Connor by fighting them head-on. You outgrow them. You make them irrelevant. And then, when the whole world is watching, that's when you pull the rug. That's when you take everything. So I waited, built, watched, and the higher Connor climbed, the harder he was going to fall. But before I get to the moment where everything finally tipped, the moment where the name Bradley suddenly meant more than Bradford and Lane ever had, you need to see what happened the night my father called me again. Because that call changed everything. My father called at 7:42 p.m. on a Thursday. I remember the time exactly, not because of the call itself, but because I'd just finished sketching the first mock-up of Relay's mobile interface. I was holding the paper in my hand when my phone buzzed. When I saw Dad on the screen, I didn't answer right away. I just stared at it, thumb hovering, feeling that old familiar mix of curiosity and dread. It had been months since we spoke. Not since the Christmas jab. Not since Connor pitched my stolen idea to a room full of investors. And certainly not since I'd started quietly building something that would make their entire little empire look like a strip mall next to a space station. Still, I picked up. "Hello." There was a pause, just a second too long to be normal. Then his voice, low and oddly flat. "Bradley, we need to talk." I stayed quiet. He cleared his throat. "It's about Connor." I sat up. "He's been reckless," Dad said. "He's made some promises he can't keep. Overextended. Took on a few projects that aren't materializing." I didn't say a word. I let the silence do the heavy lifting. He took a breath, probably realizing I wasn't going to rescue him from the awkwardness. "Look, I know things have been tense, but this isn't just about him. It's about the firm. Your mother and I. This is our legacy. And if we don't find a way to stabilize, we could be looking at a major restructuring. Maybe even downsizing." I almost laughed. Restructuring. Corporate speak for, we messed up and now people are losing their jobs. "What do you want from me?" I finally asked. Another pause. Longer this time. "We need a partner. Someone with vision. With credibility in the tech space." It was the most careful dance around the word you I'd ever heard. I leaned back in my chair and looked out the window. Snow had started falling, big quiet flakes against the city lights. I thought about all the years I sat at that Thanksgiving table, smiling through gritted teeth while they praised Connor's every step like he was solving world hunger. And now, with the paint still fresh on his phony tech division, he was drowning, and Dad was asking me to throw him a life vest. "I'll think about it," I said. He sighed like that wasn't the answer he wanted, but he thanked me anyway and hung up. I didn't think about it. Not in the way he meant, anyway. Because that call confirmed something I'd only suspected until then. The cracks were forming. Connor had overreached. He'd grabbed for something shiny without understanding the machinery underneath. He thought stealing my blueprint would build him a castle, but he didn't know the language of architecture. He didn't understand scale. He copied what he could see, not what I knew. And now, the castle was crumbling. That night, I opened a folder I hadn't touched in almost a year. It was called Firebreak. I created it the same week Connor first posted about revolutionizing property management. It was my insurance, my pressure release valve, a backup plan in case I ever needed to burn the whole thing down. Inside were screenshots, timestamps, contracts, emails, even an early video recording of me demoing Streamline to Connor in my old apartment. His voice clearly audible asking, "Can I take a copy of this to show Dad?" I'd said yes at the time. Trusted him. Thought he wanted to help. The irony? That one moment of naive trust was now the nail I'd used to shut his corporate coffin. But I didn't want to just expose him. I wanted to ruin the illusion. Not just to the public, but to the people who mattered most to him. I wanted his mentors, his investors, his LinkedIn fan club, to all realize, at once, that the Emperor had no code. So I started planning. Step 1, gather receipts. Not just of the theft, but of the incompetence that followed. I started reaching out, quietly, to a few businesses that had trialed his platform. Asked simple questions. How was the onboarding process? Was customer support responsive? Did the system perform as advertised? Most of them were polite. But one guy, a contractor named Javier, let it all spill. It was trash, man, he said. Broke twice in a week. I emailed support and got an auto reply saying they'd respond in 72 hours. 72. I run a crew of 12. That's 3 lost jobs in a weekend. I asked if he'd be willing to talk on record. He agreed, but only if I blurred his face and voice. Don't want to burn bridges, he said. But I did, and I was just getting started. Step 2. Cut off Connor's escape routes. I knew they were in talks with a VC firm, one that specialized in propping up family legacy tech. I also knew a junior partner there, Mia, from college. We weren't close, but we'd been friendly. I sent her a message. Before you sign anything with Bradford and Lane, ask yourself why their back-end code looks like it was written by a summer intern with a caffeine problem. Also, happy to chat if you want the real story. She called me the next day. I told her everything. She didn't say much on the call, just listened. But 3 days later, the funding deal quietly evaporated. The official reason? Strategic pivot. Right. Step 3. Control the narrative. I started prepping a press release. Not a bitter rant or a legal notice. Something more surgical. The title? When Innovation is Imitated. How one founder's vision was repackaged by the very people who mocked him. It was clean, calm, cold. I detailed the timeline, the evidence, the breach of trust. I didn't name Connor outright, but anyone reading it, especially those in our city's business circles, would know exactly who I meant. I sent it to 3 journalists I'd spoken to after the Streamline acquisition. All of them responded within hours. Can we run this with an interview? One asked. No, I said. Not yet. Because I was saving the best for last. See, Connor had a birthday coming up. 35. My mom was planning a surprise party. One of those rented hall, catered bar, everyone in their Sunday best kind of deals. And I was invited. Not by my mother, of course, but by my aunt, who always liked me better than Connor anyway. She slipped me the details and said, you should come. Show your face. Remind them you're not hiding. I almost declined. But then I had an idea. A beautiful, terrible, perfect idea. The party was at a country club just outside the city. The kind of place where people judged you by your shoes and the number of syllables in your wine order. I showed up 5 minutes late, on purpose. The room was already full. Laughter bouncing off the chandeliers, people sipping cocktails, waiters weaving through clusters of khaki and pastel. Connor stood near the stage, laughing too loudly. He wore a blazer that probably cost more than my first car. His girlfriend, tall, blonde, surgically symmetrical, clung to his arm like an accessory. He didn't see me at first, but Dad did. His smile faltered. Then Mom saw me. Her lips pressed together, a flicker of worry passing through her eyes. She hadn't invited me, and now she didn't know what I'd do. I did nothing. Not yet. I mingled, shook a few hands, kept my smile warm and unreadable. Then, right before dessert, the MC took the mic. Let's take a moment to honor our birthday boy, he said. Not just a leader in real estate, but an innovator in tech. A man who's changing how businesses work. The lights dimmed. The projector behind him flickered to life. A video started playing. Connor's tech journey. A highlight reel of his greatest hits. Footage from panels, fake UI mock-ups, sound bites about disruption. The crowd clapped. My dad smiled proudly. My mom looked like she might cry. And when it ended, I stepped onto the stage. Uninvited. Unannounced. Microphone in hand. Hi everyone, I said, heart hammering behind my ribs. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to add one more clip to the highlight reel. The projector flicked again. New footage. Me, in my apartment, demoing the prototype to Connor. Him asking, can I take a copy of this to show Dad? Me replying, sure, just don't leak it anywhere yet. Then, screenshots, emails, the stolen pitch deck, my tagline, my interface. Gasps rippled through the crowd. And then, black screen, silence. I looked out over the sea of frozen faces. Connor's mouth hung open. His girlfriend had let go of his arm. My dad's face was bloodless. My mom. She wasn't crying anymore. I held the mic steady. Happy birthday, Connor. I stepped off the stage. But that wasn't the revenge. That was just the invitation. Because the next day, the real show would begin. And no one was ready for what was coming. Connor didn't follow me out of the country club. I half expected him to storm after me, red-faced and sputtering, but when I looked back over my shoulder, He was still frozen in place. People whispered around him. Some avoided his eyes. A few, just a few, looked at me instead, the way you look at someone who just flipped over the table after playing the long game in silence. The damage was done, but the fallout? That was still coming. I didn't sleep that night. Not from anxiety. From adrenaline. Every moment I'd ever swallowed my pride. Every family dinner I'd gritted through with a fake smile. Every sarcastic jab about my silly little app. It all rushed back like a dam breaking in slow motion. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the background character in my own story. I was the storm. By sunrise, the video I'd shown at the party had already leaked. I hadn't posted it myself. I didn't need to. Someone recorded it. Of course they did. And it made its way to Twitter, then Reddit, then LinkedIn. The caption read, "Startup founder crashes his golden boy brother's birthday with proof of stolen IP. You need to see this." It racked up 2 million views in 12 hours. My inbox was chaos. So was Connor's. But the difference? I'd been waiting for this. I had my press release locked, polished, and ready. By noon, I sent it out to every tech and business outlet within arm's reach. It wasn't angry or emotional. It was calculated. Precise. I detailed everything, complete with documentation and references. I never used his name, but everyone connected the dots. And I made sure to include a simple line at the bottom. Bradley Lane is now the founder and CEO of Relay, a platform built from scratch, without shortcuts, without handouts, and without family firms in the rear view. That last part, that was the match on gasoline. By evening, Connor was trending on Twitter. Not in a good way. Headlines swirled. Local real estate heir accused of plagiarizing brother's startup. Bradford and Lane faces tech scandal after viral birthday clip. The app war between brothers. Legacy versus vision. Then the call started. Sandra forwarded me one from a mutual contact, the VC firm that pulled out of Connor's deal a few months back. The message was short. "Glad we passed. Let us know if you need anything." 2 days later, one of Connor's biggest clients, Chamberlain Properties, publicly announced they were reevaluating strategic partnerships in light of recent revelations. And just like that, the dominoes began to fall. Connor tried to fight it, of course. He posted a statement. I knew he would. It was one of those corporate, gaslighty apologies. It's unfortunate that a private misunderstanding between brothers has become so public. I have always admired Bradley's work and hope to honor his vision by bringing similar innovation to a broader platform. Translation: I stole his idea, got caught, and now I'm trying to spin it like a tribute. The comments shredded him. One particularly brutal reply read, "You didn't honor his work. You colonized it. There's a difference." Even the city's tech publication, Startup State Weekly, ran an op-ed titled, "Why Family Business is No Excuse for Theft in Tech." My father tried to reach me again. Several times. I ignored his calls. Eventually, he sent an email. "We never meant to hurt you, Bradley. Please understand we were just trying to protect the company." That told me everything. Protect the company. Not support my son. Not apologize for what we did. Just protect their bottom line. So I sent a single-sentence reply. "You should have protected your son instead." And then, I cut them off. Every last one of them. I blocked my parents' numbers. Removed them from my LinkedIn. I didn't need their approval, and I certainly didn't owe them closure. I changed my number, moved into a new place, and told the front desk to never accept visitors claiming to be family without calling me first. Connor, meanwhile, was circling the drain. By week 3, more people came forward. Former employees who said he overpromised and underdelivered. Businesses who admitted they paid for a product that barely worked. One even had receipts that Connor fudged demo metrics to impress investors. His tech division was shut down within the month. The real estate firm survived, but barely. Bradford and Lane laid off 10 employees. Quietly, of course. They claimed market volatility in their statement. But people knew. Everyone knew. By contrast, Relay exploded. We closed our Series A at $12 million. I brought on Lila and Marcus full-time and gave them equity. Sandra joined as a board advisor. And the users? They didn't care about the drama. They cared that the platform worked, and it did. We released new features monthly. Retention was off the charts. Even Javier, the contractor who hated Connor's copycat product, became one of our biggest champions. And me? I stopped asking for seats at tables I didn't belong to. I built my own table. And slowly, people came to me. One day, months later, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. Sloppy cursive. It was from my mom. She didn't say she was sorry. Not really. She just said she missed me. That Connor was struggling. That family should stay together. I read it twice, then fed it through my shredder. The final nail came when I got invited to speak at a regional tech conference. Not as a panelist, as the keynote. The theme? Authentic innovation in a legacy world. I didn't tell anyone I was going. I just showed up. Wore a simple blazer. No flashy graphics. No entourage. Just me, a microphone, and my story. I talked about what it meant to build something real. How lonely it was. How painful. How sometimes the people closest to you become your biggest obstacles. How you have to keep building anyway. The crowd gave a standing ovation. Afterward, a guy in a gray suit approached me. Mid-40s, expensive haircut, strong handshake. I used to work with your brother, he said, not unkindly. He was always loud. You. He gestured toward the stage. You're quiet, but you build earthquakes. I smiled. I prefer tremors that don't stop. He laughed and gave me his card. Call me if you ever want to go global. As I walked back to my hotel, I thought about every version of myself they tried to erase. The dreamer, the coder, the fake CEO. They thought they could mock me into silence. But all they did was sharpen my edge. Revenge didn't come with shouting or fists. It came with focus, with patience, with building something so undeniable, so airtight, that the only thing left for them to do was watch it grow. I didn't need their name, didn't need their firm, didn't need the family. I had relay. I had proof. And for the first time in my life, I had peace. I didn't win because I fought back. I won because I stopped asking for permission to exist.